Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the Anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Welcome to the Omega Particle Podcast. This is your favorite Star Trek podcast hosted by a guy who has absolutely no business being this emotionally invested in a show from the 90s. Like the man said, I am your host, the humble, the honorable, and sometimes the emotionally unavailable Jonathan Wiegand. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening today. If my voice sounds a little bit different than other episodes, I am getting over this sinus cold infection where it would make me dizzy. It was really terrible, and it was awful. So I feel like my voice is up to it. I'm going to try it. If it sounds very different, that's why I get that sick voice where it's like deeper and makes me sound cooler, but I'm not that deep a voice anyway. And if this is your first time, welcome. I'm very excited to talk about this today. Before we do, here in the United States, this episode will release on Monday, right, Luna? Yeah, Luna the intern, everybody. So that is Memorial Day, very somber weekend, very good time to remember all the sacrifices those people in uniform do for us and do for our country. So we definitely thank them for that. And I learned something really crazy. We were at a church this morning in our parish, and our building is very old. It's from like the 1830s. And there was 4 men who went to World War I, and they all perished. That was interesting story that we heard this morning. Again, very somber, but again, very thankful. That's what's going on here in America tomorrow. Again, just welcome so much. And let's get into Star Trek, because we are covering today Season 1, Episode 14, called The Storyteller. And this is the episode that I refer to as the one where Miles accidentally becomes a cult leader. Because that's kind of what it is. Like, it's just random small village on this hilltop that has this smoke monster that's powered by insecurity. I immediately had the show Lost flashbacks. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is just like Lost, but maybe there's no like polar bears running around or whatever. And so we have this smoke monster that is powered by insecurity, like I said, and we have this small village that has a very intense community theater vibe. It gives off that if Quark Dresser had like a whole village, this is what they would look like. And we also have Chief O'Brien running around trying to get out any way he can outside of just leaving. Why wouldn't he just leave? I never understood that either way. This episode to me is so Season 1 that I could smell the cardboard set through my TV screen. It is just so awkward. It's weirdly spiritual. It has this Julian Bashir mode that he's like, I just graduated Starfleet Medical and I want everyone to know, and I'm like a golden retriever kind of attitude, and it's just a lot. My favorite is when the scene, like the dude's trying to stab O'Brien, and Bashir's like, oh no, he's getting stabbed. Let me run in there. I'm like, why wouldn't you yell for help or either way? Before we get into that, this episode, the stakes are very high. The fog is sentient, and Miles O'Brien is having a full-blown crisis and doesn't really know what to do except eat all the free food that they gave him. So we're going to do a full breakdown today. We're going to do a review of the A plot, the B plot, character development, production trivia that we found out, which some are actually pretty cool, and even a few head-scratching moments like, why the heck did they write this way? So settle in, everybody. Grab your spiritual robe and your smoke repellent, and we're going to dig right in. So, Luna, let's roll that beautiful bean footage. We're going to get started with going down the A plot. This is the legend of O'Brien the Unwilling. He has no desire to do this in any way, shape, or form. So here's how it goes. Bashir and O'Brien beam down to this Bajoran village to help with a quote-unquote medical issue, which this medical issue, they told the station, everyone's going to die. Everyone is going to die. So help, please. And then they send 2 people. They send an engineer and they send Bashir. That's it. I feel like if a village was like, hey, there's like 30, 40 people going to die. We need help. They're like, all right, we'll send 2 people. Good luck. And, this, either way, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But this immediately, to me, they go into help and it spirals into this weird spiritual crisis because Star Trek. And that's what we do here. This village is under attack from something called the Dal'Rok. And it's this glowing, smoky cloud that rolls in like a haunted vape pen every year and tries to destroy everything unless the Sarah, this village spiritual leader, again, like I said at the opening, the community theater vibe, unless he can tell a story to hold it back. And somehow it works. And somehow somebody's like, yes, he tells the story, and then the smoke goes away and everybody's okay with that. And if this sounds ludicrous, that's because it is. I'm not going to cut any corners today. It's just real wild. And the fun fact about this whole plot is that this was originally written as a next generation script. Yes, it was submitted by Kurt Bensmiller as a TNG idea, but the producers passed on it until DS9 needed something to stretch the budget. They needed an episode. Again, we're episode 14 now, almost in the middle of the season, kind of the tail end, going towards the tail end, should I say, and they needed to save some money. And nothing says budget saver like fog and yelling. And that's what happened. We find out that the Sarah is dying. He's a very old man, and he's dying of old age. His organs are shutting down. And his last act is to basically yeet the mantle of leadership onto O'Brien. Why? Because O'Brien's there. That's it. He's like, you look like a cool young man. Here, have this spiritual leadership, and you'll have to live in this village and defend this people 5 days out of the year, because the Dal'Rok only shows up 5 days out of the year. Yep. I do love the fact that you have to hand it to Colin McCready. He has this great acting in this episode when he's told that he has to be the Sarah and then the leadership's gone to him. He looks like he's just been told, hey, you're going to have to do karaoke in front of 10,000 people, and it's going to be some Taylor Swift song, so good luck. Now, there's anything wrong with Taylor Swift. I'm just saying, like, probably not something a Irishman in his 40s wants to sing. Another thing, I remember watching this episode because it always stood out, like, through my DS9 rewatch, and I always thought it was on another planet. I always thought, oh, they go to another planet, and this is this weird village. But no, it's actually on Bajor. And so I feel like there's no heads up from Kira. There's no help to be like, oh, hey, guys, I heard you're going to the smoke village. Here's some help and some insight into it. Nope, nothing. Especially when an entire village is going to be destroyed. She's like, never heard of it. Good luck. And I feel like if I lived on a planet that had a smoke monster that showed up 5 days out of the year and could destroy everybody, I think I would know about it, at least have heard about it at some point. But no, that's not how it works. And then, how would this work in the occupation? The Cardassians have invaded Bajor, and I'm sure they've been around this village. It's not like these people have been untouched by the occupation. And do the Cardassians just allow this weird fog monster to just be okay? So we're going to go down a rabbit hole we don't need to go down, because that's not what we're here for. Or maybe we are, but who knows? So let's just pause right there. O'Brien didn't ask for this. He didn't apply. There's no interview. There's no background check. 1 minute he's fixing this transmitter, and next he's standing in front of an angry weather pattern with villagers chanting, "Tell us a tale." And the villagers, they're like way too effing into this. It's a small town theater trope that thinks they're doing Shakespeare, but it's just really Fog the musical. It's just not very good. And they're talking about speaking of unity, and the monster will totally go away because it's science or magic, or I don't know. Nobody knows. So it's just, yeah, it is what it is. It's weird, and it's Star Trek, peak early season 1 Star Trek, like I said. Moving on to the character dynamics, specifically with Miles and Bashir. And I always refer to them as the Space's odd couple. You know, they have a very weird bromance at the beginning, and this episode is very proto-bromance. You know, you have season 1, Bashir is trying so hard to be friends with O'Brien. I think I said it earlier, it's like a golden retriever following around a grumpy cat. Bashir is all this energy and all this optimism, while O'Brien's internal monologue is just like, hey, please stop talking, please stop talking, please let me go home. No, I don't think you're annoying. Yes, you're annoying. I mean, yeah, that was an actual line from the beginning of the show, is that Bashir's like, we haven't talked in 2 hours, and do you think I'm annoying? I don't think I've ever, as a grown man, as I sit here in my bunker on the eastern coast of the United States, as a 36-year-old man, ever said to another man or woman since I've been over the age of 18, do you think I'm annoying? And have a heartfelt like, hey, do you really think? No, I've not done that. Because I just feel like eventually you just grow up out of it, and that you can realize, hey, I'm probably being annoying. Let's not get into that. But there is chemistry there as the episode. There are these little seedlings of chemistry that we'll eventually see in season 4 of DS9 just blossom into one of the best friendships of all of Star Trek. And we're not there yet. I think it's fun to see the seedlings and to see where it grows, especially if you're doing what I'm doing. So right now I'm going through like a personal rewatch of DS9 just because I love Star Trek and I watch a couple episodes every day. And I'm on season 4, almost done with season 4 of DS9. And that's like peak, this bromance between O'Brien and Bashir. So it was fun to go back and rewatch this episode a few times and prep for this episode and be like, wow, this is completely different in their relationship. It's completely wild. And so hats off to the show for progressing them in such a natural way that it didn't feel like they were banging us over the head, or that it was like, boom, they're automatically best friends. It took a while. Also, another fun fact, thank you, Luna, reminding me. So O'Brien wasn't actually supposed to be a major DS9 character. He appeared in 52 TNG episodes, but the producer realized everyone loved him, and he became a mainstay, and he has now become this everyman in Deep Space Nine, and that's kind of why they always put an episode. He's almost in every episode, either in some type of role, but he's always at some point in an episode, which is great. And that was a fun little tidbit. I didn't know that. I thought he was always going to be a major DS9 character, but I guess not. So it's also fun, again, talking about Colin McCready and his role here as O'Brien. The dude's all about pragmatism. He's all, let's solve this with a Hydra spanner. Let's get it done. Very cut and dry, black and white. And now he's stuck doing these spiritual metaphors with zero training. And it's kind of like asking your HVAC guy to lead a TED Talk on metaphysics. It's just not going to turn out very well. And speaking of disaster, let's get into the B plot. Okay, I know, Luna's giving me a look. I did enjoy the B plot. And the B plot, of course, being Jake and Nog's political science 101 lesson that we learned. And I thought it was okay. I think, okay, well, before we get into what I think, let's give you a little recap. So the B plot is Jake and Nog are assigned to babysit this young Bajoran leader named Vera's Soul. And she's trying to broker peace between these rival provinces, because the rival provinces, they had a treaty that this river would put a boundary on their two provinces, and that the Cardassians are in occupation, blocked off this river, redirected it, and it left 20 kilometers. And they basically lost 20 kilometers. And so they're pissed, so they're coming back to the negotiation table. But this 14-year-old is in charge of one of them. Okay, that's cool. I guess you don't have anybody else. I guess it's almost a patriarchal or whatever. Like, it's basically like a kingdom now for these provinces, and which is odd. So what do Jake and Nog do with this? They think she's super attractive, and they immediately sneak her out of her quarters and show her this Ferengi game, and they teach her the art of manipulation and also try to pull a prank, stealing Odo's bucket. And real quick, another fun fact. So the actress playing Vera Soul is Gina Phillips, who would later star in Jeepers Creepers. And this was one of her earliest roles. And when you rewatch this episode, you can tell she's giving it way too much than the script deserves. And that's okay. Like, she's still an amazing actress. And when I saw her, I was like, she looks familiar. So I actually had to like deep dive in, and I was like, oh, she's from Jeepers Creepers. And if you haven't seen that movie, that one's amazing. Very creepy, very jeepery. Jeepery? Is that a word? It is now. So, also, this is one of the first times that we see Jake and Nog operating outside of parental supervision. Outside of Captain Sisko's quarters, outside of the bar, we see them kind of just be individuals and as a friend group completely unleashed. And honestly, it works. They have this natural chemistry. Even in this half-baked subplot about regional diplomacy, they bring a lot of charm. And again, I feel like this whole episode is just about laying the foundation for the seedlings that are going to happen. So we saw that between the bromance with O'Brien and Bashir, and now we're seeing it with Jake and Nog. We're seeing these little glimmers, little shimmers of what's about to come, which is fantastic. And let's be real, I think the whole part, I will say my favorite part of the B plot is Nog. Every line that comes out of the kid is just pure Ferengi chaos, and he's trying to impress this 14-year-old girl, and he's trying to do whatever he can to help her, I don't know, like him, I guess. And one of the lines is perfect. He's like, we'll distract them with cups and profit motives, and that is what my Uncle Quark does during audit. So, chef's kiss. I love that line because a lot of times for work we get audited from external forces for being in finance, being in accounting. So a lot of times that happens, and so I definitely love that. But I know auditors are not monsters. I used to be one. But moving on to the monster that's not a monster, let's get into the Dal'Rok. So here's the big twist. If you're like, okay, it's a freaking haunted vape pen, so what's the deal here? Is it actually really entity? Is it really a holographic projection? What's going on here? And here's the big twist. The Dal'Rok isn't real. It's a projection, but not holographic. It's powered by an orb fragment in the Syrah's possession and amplified by the villagers' belief. Which means this entire thing is basically mass hallucination meets holographic LARPing. So if the Syrah just straight up died, and he never taught anybody about this, the Dal'Rok would never come back. Because he's the one with the orb fragment in his hand, creating it, and then through the power of unity, they destroy it. Yep, that's it. And again, doing some research on this, the original design of the Dal'Rok was supposed to be this like wolf-like creature, but the budget wasn't there. Again, they try to use this as a budget cost-cutting episode, and so we get a cloud. And I think that's Star Trek's most iconic pivot is like, we can't afford a creature suit, so let's just use smoke. And I feel like this is the tippy top of budget-saving episodes. There's also almost a theme message around here. You know, the story isn't about the monster. It's about how belief creates unity, and the real enemy is doubt. And the real weapon is community storytelling. Or maybe the real enemy is giving the fog machine guy too much power. I think it's knowing that it was a budget-saving episode, putting those goggles on makes this episode make a lot more sense. So getting back to the new Syrah and how that actually comes around, and that's because O'Brien basically is trying to fake his way through the story. He's barely surviving, and he tells the villagers, no thanks, I'm out, I can't do this. And before convincing the Syrah's apprentice to step up and take over, after he almost tries to stab him, because yeah. And here's the kicker. That's what the old Syrah wanted all along. It was all a setup. He knew the apprentice didn't have confidence, so he had to manipulate events to get him ready. And it is the most, I'm sorry if you don't like this franchise, but it is the most Jedi Master Yoda moment of DS9 Season 1. The misdirection, the symbolism, and having one confused Irishman. And so it allows this new Syrah to take over. He defeats the Dal'Rok. Now O'Brien and Bashir can go back to DS9, happy knowing that this one tiny village on a mountaintop can now defeat their fake smoke monster. Yep. There's sentences in this podcast where I'm like, is this what I want to be doing? I'm just kidding. I love this. Absolutely love it. Look, the Storyteller is not DS9's best. It's a perfect example of what DS9 does in its early days, and that it experiments. It does a lot of different options. It throws O'Brien into absurd situations. It gives Jake and Nog space to grow. It tries to blend politics, mysticism, and community, and sometimes successfully, and sometimes we get nothing but fog. No pun intended. But even in its flaws, it's still fun. It gives us a world-building episode. It deepens the O'Brien-Bashir dynamic. It gives us a teenage diplomat using Ferengi gambling tactics to prevent war. I mean, that's something. And so we'll rank this episode on the O'Brien scale of suffering from 1 to Keiko making him go to a poetry reading. And I give this 2.8 out of 5 on the O'Brien scale. I mean, they get points for ambition, they get docked for weird pacing, and bonus points for Julian Bashir being thirsty as hell. And let me know what you think. What did you like about the episode? What you didn't like about the episode? If you agree or disagree with any of my statements here or anything with my I don't think I gave too many hot takes. This is not a beloved episode. It'd be one thing if I was like trashing Into Pale Moonlight and people were coming for me. That'd be different. But this is like the Storyteller. Everybody knows this is the cult crazy episode. But either way, let me know what you think. Reach out to us on social media. We would love to hear from you guys. And finally, just remember real quick, if you ever go to a small village and someone hands you a robe and says, stand on the rock and save us, just say no, people. Or better yet, you can just like fake a transporter malfunction. Either way, Luna, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me on this DS9 review on the Medical Particle Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review. Thank you all so much. It's been a joy, and I'm so happy to be on these DS9 reviews because DS9 is my favorite Star Trek. Sisko's my favorite captain, so it is such a fun thing to do these. And even when the crazier episodes, and this one was always stuck out to me, is like, man, I can't wait to get to this episode on the review because it's going to be fun. So thank you for joining me on this little fun ride on this Memorial Day weekend in 2025. But again, feel free to reach out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you guys and get in touch. And as always, remember to take care of yourselves. Keep your mental health on point, in check. If you feel you need to talk to somebody, reach out to friends, family, maybe professional help, whatever you need. We just want everybody to be here tomorrow, as they say. So thank you all so much. And until next time, second star on the right, straight on till morning.